Welcome back, friends. The next series of episodes, Sarah and I, prior to the outbreak of coronavirus, decided on finishing out the liturgical season with the resurrection, ascension, and Pentecost. And even after, depending on when you listen to this broadcast or show or the podcast, whatever time frame that might be, I still made an executive decision to take the time and to really reflect on what our dear Lord merited for us, something we couldn't have merited for ourselves. And I think perhaps that can give us an eye on the prize in the midst of any challenge or difficulty that might arise, in my opinion, a pseudo-pandemic or not. But it could be cancer, it could be the death of a child. I was at a final commendation service yesterday for parents who had miscarried. So regardless of the circumstances you find yourself in, it is really worthwhile, I think, taking note of what our Lord merited for us. So I think a brief overview of what the cost, that there's going to be some high, the structuring of this in my mind will be, we're going to look at very briefly, what the cost is for following Christ. And then we're going to see what the fruits are. I mean, because that's his merits, the things that he gave to us, as it were. And so the three parts are going to be our sanity, our happiness, and our own resurrection. And within that, we're going to revisit, I can't remember if we had covered some of the attributes of a resurrected body that our Lord has, our Lady has, and then gifted to us as well. So when we look at the cost of an endeavor, we're going to follow the trajectory of Christ. He said, before a king goes into battle, the king sits down, he looks to see if he's going to be successful with the army he has, and implicit with the winning of that is the booty, is the treasure, is the territory worth, the death and depletion of the king's treasury? If it is, and he has sufficient wherewithal, resources, he goes into battle. Even if he had sufficient resources, he may not think that it's worth the effort, and then step back and not go. So I think it is necessary for us to look to see where our forces are, where's our spiritual life, what are the means for that, but two, what do we get when we follow Christ? What are those rewards? And I propose that those rewards are a life that makes sense, happiness, and eternal beatitude.
Do you want me to comment on that? I mean, one of the things that I think is very true in regards to that is obviously the supernatural life notwithstanding, our final happiness and our eternal salvation, just that life of sanity, right? The life that can make connections between suffering and joy, the life that can make peace between those two seemingly opposing elements, I think is actually one of the fundamental graces and gifts that is given to the person who believes.
That is right. I was taking some of my thoughts from Frank Sheed's book, Theology and Sanity. Always a great read. And he defines sanity as opposed to sanctity. Sanctity is, we're discussing the holiness of a person's soul. But sanity is seeing reality as God sees it. And that is truth for the intellect. And intellectual truth, therefore, would be defined as sanity. Sanity gives a sure basis for decisions, and exactly what Sarah just said, it allows for peace of heart. That peace in the midst of suffering, where you can find joy and peace resides. That is what sanity gives. Um, God is, so here's a summary of how God sees things. God's infinite, eternal, a Trinity, and unity. Humanity is finite. We're created in time. We're fallen, and yet redeemed by Christ. Individual life, born into a life of nature, but reborn into a life of grace, united with Christ in the church, which is his mystical body. Aided by angels, hindered by devils, destined for heaven, and in peril of hell. And to the degree that a person has this particular mental landscape is the degree of sanity that that person possesses. It's not a matter of seeing what other people see and then adding these theological truths on top of it. But the concepts of God being infinite, eternal, triune, that we are finite, all of those truths I just said. It's about seeing God created, how God created, he upholds, and he is the goal of all existence. And that's the difference. But if you see that God created, he upholds it, and he is the goal, that's completely different from the attitude that life is just one damn thing after another. And I use damn very clearly. And that is a very popular thing, that life is just one damn thing after another. And it's also the difference between looking at your life, or I look at my life as destined for greatness and holiness, or it's just, happenstance. We do not add anything to his happiness, but nonetheless, he willed us into existence because he loved us and wanted to share his life with us so we could experience his love and goodness. To know that I am loved beyond measure puts the cross in its proper life. So we tie back into now, all right, the cost is the cross. We've lost Sarah for a little bit. There, we're back.
My phone, that's why it's going to be better if I can get onto Skype, so my apologies.
That's fine. So the cross is a real cost. It's, it's everything. It's an all or nothing kind of a thing.
Right.
But the first gift you get from accepting that is you get your mind back. I know I do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it is that whole life that is rightly ordered, right? It follows from the fact that, if you proceed from the right premise, and you follow these logical progressions, you will come to truth. It's almost as though God, I mean, I think that he did will that our ability to reason would lead us to him, provided we started from him, right? He is the Alpha and he's the Omega. So if we begin with him, we end with him. But for those of him who reject him, it's you've already begun from a faulty premise, and no matter what line of reasoning you take, you are never going to be able to come to a logically or a conclusively satisfactory answer for yourself. Because fundamentally, every human person knows that they don't have within themselves the ability to sustain themselves. Every individual person who is truly honest and aware recognizes that alone he can't really do anything. I mean, he's, we can do many great things. I mean, that may well be true, and there might be very many people who do great things individually outside of God, but they sacrifice happiness then, because invariably what ends up happening is they find at the end of this driving power, because maybe that was their motivation, was power, or maybe their motivation was money. They get to the end of that motion or that movement, and they realize that there was nothing there. I mean, if you don't have anything to share, anyone to share joy with, life becomes very unsatisfactory. And for us who recognizes that we place our beginning in God, recognizing that he made us to know to know him, to love him, and to be happy with him forever, is a perfect completion of that search for meaning, right? I mean, because in the end, you began in him, knowing that he provided this for you, and it will end with him, and all of those things will reach their correct ending. I mean, he can't fail to be good in his generosity. We can fail him, right? I mean, whatever that great line is from the gospel, God can't help but be faithful. So all those things that he promises, he will fulfill.
That is right. Okay, my friends, we'll continue on with the next great gift, which would be happiness. To the next time, Fides et Ratio.